So thank you everyone for joining us today. It's the first time that we organize an event in English. This is because we have a special guest, which is Reza. We will just ask you please to turn off your microphone, not to be disturbed during the whole event, and the camera too. And feel free to ask questions in the chat because we are doing through Teams, so you can use the chat, okay? And the event is recorded, so for people who cannot attend today, the video will be available in our YouTube channel, and we will also upload the presentations in our GitHub. Okay, so what is the agenda of today? We will shortly present ourselves, the group and the speaker. Then we will let Reza do his conference about Power Query and M. And if there are any questions, we will dedicate a time to answer the questions. I mean, Reza will answer. And we will finish with a few announcements about the community. So, who are we behind the organization? Well, there is me. I'm Dania Mamodali. I am a Power BI consultant at Capgemini, Barcelona office. And I am behind the emerging Power BI blog, which is bis.pro. And as I said, I co-organize this event. Raquel, you want to say a word?
Yeah, and so I'm a business intelligence consultant in ECAMAT. It's based in Barcelona too. And we work with Microsoft's ERP and CRM. And also I co-organize CodeBar, which is a non-profit, and we aim to bring diversity into the IT world. So go check it out. That's it. Oh, and also I will be in the comments, in the chat, answering your questions too.
Okay, great. Thank you, Raquel. So yeah, this event is organized by the Power BI user group of Barcelona, and this wouldn't be possible without its members. So we are now more than 700 in the Power BI Meetup group, so you can join it by clicking on the link. And today is the 6th event that we are organizing, so we will soon celebrate our first anniversary. So just a word about the community. It's very active. Everyone is very likely to help each other, share value, share tips, and it's amazing. So thank you for all of you and for all who are here today. Now I will let Reza talk about Power Query and M, but just before that, let me introduce him. So we are very proud to have you, Reza. You are for us a high quality speaker. So just to tell people who you are the co-founder of the famous blog Radacad that you lead with Leila Etati. And I'm sure people here must have read articles about the blog Radacad, and if not, I highly recommend to go have a look and follow the hard work. And you are also author, trainer, speaker, and consultant. You have more than 20 years of experience in business intelligence, and you are also a Microsoft MVP. And I can see in the background that it's been many years, so that's great. And yeah, you are living in Auckland, New Zealand, so the opposite side of the planet. And we know that you are making a big effort to be here for us today. So if it was not an online event, I would ask for a big applause, but we cannot do it today. But it's a truly big thank you to you. And now I will let you speak.
Great. Thank you for the fantastic introduction. Let me share my screen. Oh, sorry, wrong button. Share.
Just if Juan Naya Estrada, si puedes quitar tu video, por favor. If Juan Naya, thank you. Perfect.
Okay. So let me know when you see my screen.
Yep.
Okay, that sounds good. Right. Okay. Good night, good evening, everyone over there. It is like 9 p.m. your dinner time. And special thanks to Raquel and Dania for the opportunity to present. I never presented in a Spanish user group, so this is my first time presenting in there. I just know like just a couple of words like hola, and then at the end just gracias. So the rest would be English, I'm afraid. Sorry about that. This session is about Power Query and M, the lightsaber for the data Jedi. The reason that I call it this way is that if you are a fan of Star Wars, or if you have at least watched Star Wars, you know that Jedi do a lot of things with the lightsaber. They dodge like bullets. They do anything you can imagine with their lightsaber, and that is what you can actually do with Power Query and M as well. So this session basically is about advanced tips and tricks of using Power Query. I start with like some beginner things and then jump into those a little bit advanced. In 1 hour, actually, we can't cover much, but I just give you some head starts to get going. I had a slide to explain myself, but we already had a great introduction, so I'll skip that. Just letting you know that I'll be sharing these slides later on, so you have access to my contact information if you want to. I don't have much slides, I have just a bunch of demos. So here you can see the agenda of the demo. So as a warm-up, I start with get data from email, because you probably have seen a lot of get data from database, get data from files. So we'll be doing get data from email. Just a warm-up to show you what Power Query is, because you might not know about Power Query already. Then I'll explain some of the advanced options of Power Query, like things such as record locator, error handling, how to do advanced options in group by, which you can't do through graphical interface, and things like that, right? All of these things I'm explaining to you, I have a blog article and video about that in the Radacad website. You can go and check it out. If you have any questions, and just feel free to write it in the chat window. I'll get to that at a certain point of the time between demos. Right. So this session is basically demo. So we'll start with Power BI Desktop. The first demo I want to show you is to get data from email, just as a warm-up to show you what Power Query is. But Power Query in Power BI Desktop, you can get data from many data sources. These can be files, these can be databases. Here you can see files, databases, many other sources. But for this example, I'll start with getting data from an email. Now here I have actually an email. This is the email I'm going to send to a specific mail address with this subject and this file. This is a CSV file, contains some data. Sometimes you get actually data files like that in your email. So what I'll do is I'll connect to my email address from Power BI. And this at the moment works with Office 365 based email addresses, of course. If it is other email addresses, you should work with their APIs. Depends on how that API is provided. So here I can see my calendar, my meeting requests, people, tasks, everything. But one of those is mail, which is actually all the emails that I have, right? I can select that. Transform data will bring Power Query editor for me. This is the place that I can go and do any data wrangling I want. I can do data cleaning, data preparation, anything like that. So here you can see that I see all the emails in arrived in this inbox, right? I can filter those emails. I can say, show me only those that are in inbox or sent item, because you might have that email in multiple folders. You can filter based on the subject, based on the date, and anything like that. Now let me just filter it based on the date, time, received. I can say, for example, give me anything that is received in the previous, let's say 5 days. And that means that I shouldn't have anything in the previous 5 days. So apparently I do have one. Yep, that is just like an automatic email. And now I'm going to send that email I have prepared And that means that this should come over here when I refresh it. So obviously you schedule this report to refresh after building it. So it takes apparently a little bit more time than that. I need to wait a little bit more. My sent is still full, still sending it. So, okay. Okay, if that doesn't come, I can show you one of the previous examples I have. So what I'll do is I'll remove this filter of date time received. Oh, it just arrived over here. So let me just put that filter again back, or I don't put that filter for the date. This subject is useful enough. I can filter based on the subject. I can say, give me anything with that particular subject, right? So you might get a lot of emails, but you are only filtering for those with that subject, right? You can also filter it based on the sender. Sender itself has information about who sent this, so you can say, give me only emails with this sender and things like that, right? So let's say I did that. I have a file like this, and I want to investigate that file. In that email, I have attachments. So here I have a folder for attachments. I have a field for attachments, field for has attachments, so it obviously has attachments. Now I'm going to look at the attachment. So what I'll do is I'll remove other columns because the attachment is the only thing I need. And then I expand it to the attachment details. And this will show me that there's an attachment in that email, which was this CSV file. These are like some Fitbit activities. So this is that file. It's a CSV file, and it has some things such as this, right? So what I'm interested mostly is not the other information about the attachments. It's the file itself, which is the last column, the binary column. What I'll do, I'll remove other columns. This binary column is actually the content of the file. So I'll click on that, and that will expand to the details of that file, which gives me everything, right? So that file is a CSV file. As you can see here, it automatically detects all the information about that. I click on OK. This will create a function, custom function, automatically analyzing that file, and I get the result of that here, right? So this is that CSV file now analyzed in details. I can do some data cleaning and things like that to get rid of extra rows and columns that I don't want to, which I do that, but after sending just another email so that I can show you that we can have like two files at the same time. So this is one file. I'm going to add just one more file in here. So let's say this is another file. And now if I refresh it, this should bring me like two files. Of course, it takes a little bit of time, as you have seen the previous email took a little bit of time to come. So this would also take a little bit of time to come. But here it is. Now I have these two files. So this is watching your email. So the next refresh will pick those information. Now, in terms of cleaning the data, you can do anything you want in terms of cleaning the data. I can go here, like remove any rows that is blank. That gets rid of that. When I come here, that automatically removes that because this is using the result of that function. So if I go to that function and fix it, everything in here would be fixed as well. Like the row that has activities in it, I can come here and say remove rows, remove top rows, top one rows, because that is at the beginning of every file. And when I do that, this automatically removes that from everywhere, right? So it's quite a useful way of analyzing the data and anything of data preparation and anything like that, Power Query. I can do more things as well. Like here, you can see that my column headers are column 1, column 2, column 3 instead of this row. But I don't want to do that for every file because there's another file as well. So I come here in the function and I do that. I say use the first column, first row as the headers. And when I do that, this gets fixed, but then I get an error in the combined version, and that is because there's a change type step here that automatically added. If I remove that, that goes back to normal. I get everything working fine, right? So I'm not going to talk about the basics of Power Query in this session, but these are just few examples of how easy it is to analyze the data, do some data wrangling, data preparation using Power Query. Now, I just sent one more email to show you that there is a little bit difference when we have different type of files. So let's say this one, I send it again to that email with that subject. This time I'm going to send 2-3 files, because you can have as many as files you want in one email. And this email might have some other things, such as a signature as well, which might have images and things like that. I sent that too as well. And now when this comes, the situation would be a little bit different. So I'll refresh it here. When you prepare your Power Query steps and processes, you should make sure that this works regardless of what type of data you are getting, what type of information you are getting. Now here you can see that there is an error in here, which is probably because of one of the files appeared there. So how can I troubleshoot this? I can go a few steps back, right? Here, for example, I see that there are some rows with errors. So I go a little bit further back to see what are these. I go to the step that I had all these attachments, and I can see that some of these attachments are not actually CSV files. Because I had my signatures, these files are just like images in that signature and things like that. I can get rid of these. I can easily in this step say, give me everything only with CSV extension. Now this is all filtered with that. When I go to the last step, everything is filtered, clean, and ready, right? So it's really easy to do data preparation, data transformation. You have seen I haven't wrote any single line of code. Everything was through this graphical interface. It is a really powerful graphical interface to do all the transformations you want. However, sometimes you need to do some of the stuff using scripts. So this was just a warm-up example of how this works. Now I just show you one other example and then check if there's any questions. Let's say I have some Excel files as a source, right? Let me just bring this folder. This is Excel files. It's actually the same data. I saved it as Excel just to show you how it looks like, right? So here I have an Excel file. I just open it in this window. It opened in another screen, too many screens in one place. Okay, so here it is. This is the Excel file, right? Now, this Excel file has this sheet named 2016-07. I have another Excel file, 2016-08, right? The sheet names are different. You might have seen this ability in Power Query that you say get data from a folder. Let me just start from here. Get data from a folder, which will scan the entire folder and give you all files within that folder, which is quite helpful when you have Excel files, CSV files, and things like that in a folder. So what I'll do is I'll just copy this folder path, paste it here, click on OK. This will go and find all Excel files in that folder, which is fantastic. Then I say combine and transform data. This will combine all the files in one, which is what exactly I want, similar to that email, but this is from folder. Now, when it reads data from a folder, it asks like which file you want to use as a sample, because based on that sample, it's going to build the rest, right? I can choose any of these. Let's say first file. Now, because it's an Excel file, it asks me which sheet in that Excel file I want. And I should choose the name of that sheet. So this is in the first file, this is 2016-05. I select that, click OK. This will load that information. Yep, here it comes. So this will load that information, but I see there are some errors. These like red stripes means that there are some errors. So what I'll do, I'll go and see what are the problems. Here you can see also there's an error. Actually, the first file only processed, but anything after that didn't, right? So why this happened? This is happened because I have other files. So here you can see that other files that their sheet name is not that. So I'm looking for something with the sheet name of 2016-05. But that's not the sheet name. For these, sheet names are different. There are two ways. One way is that if I know the sheet name is always matching the Excel file name, I can get it from there and use it. But there is a much easier way to do that. Let me talk about that. I go to the function that is automatically created in Power Query. This is a function that's created by that get data from file automatically. In this function, there are a few steps. First step gets data from that Excel file. And then in that Excel file, it navigates to that sheet, right? Here is the important part. You see here that it says that go to this sheet in that file, right? And this sheet is just hard coded here. Now imagine that I have like multiple sheets. I have, just to show you something as an example, I have like a sheet here, a sheet there. Every one of these has different names, right? And this might be like just one of those sheets. Let's say you always want the first sheet. Now you can actually refer it based on the index. These sheets can be referred by the index. This first one would be index 0, 1, 2, 3, going forward like that. Let's say you always want the one with index 0. And that is easily possible. You can just do it by changing this navigation step. In the navigation step, you can come here and say, instead of all of these things, which is saying that give me the one which is a sheet, and the name 2016-05. Instead of that, I say give me the item 0. These two curly brackets are list items. In that list, I'm saying that give me the list number 0, the first item in that list, right? If I press enter, that doesn't make any difference for this file because this file was with that sheet name anyway. But when I go to the combined version, you can see that I got all the files. It needs data cleaning, of course, right? I'm not going to talk about that data cleaning process, but I don't get any errors and I get all the contents in one place, right? So what I've done is just a very simple action of changing this from saying that give me this sheet name based on the index, right? Understanding that these are indexed based, sometimes these are named based, is one of the basics of understanding the Power Query data structures. Anything inside curly bracket is a list and it's indexed based. Anything inside these brackets, square brackets, these are record, and you can refer to a record not with a number but with the field name, like data is the field name here, right? These are some of the basics understanding of Power Query, which I have a blog about that. You can go and read it through in details. Okay, now I think we can have a short stop here to see if there's any questions and then move to the next part. Okay.
I think people are processing everything.
Right, okay, yeah. Great. Everything seems to be good then. Okay, so let's move on to the next part, next example. So I said we are going to jump into more advanced topics. Oh, just give me a second. I'll bring the dog inside. Sorry about that. It's just barking.
He wants to learn too. Okay, now let's think about everything and try to process it.
If you have any question, feel free, okay? And we can also traduce. Si hay preguntas, podemos traducirlas para Reza.
Sí.
Okay, sorry about that. Right. So back to my demos. So we are talking about a little bit more advanced things here. One of the advanced options you can do with Power Query is that you can get data from a table and do some groupings on it. The grouping itself is not advanced, but sometimes you want advanced grouping. So let's say I get this table. It's a fact sales table. It has all the sales transactions in it. So like one record per product, per date, per customer, promotion, things like that. Let's say I'm not really interested to see all these details. I just want like one summary per product. I want to create like an aggregated table, which is quite helpful when you are doing aggregations in Power BI to speed up the process. Let's say I want to aggregate it. I want every product once only, and aggregation of like how many transactions we have for this product. You can easily do that with right-click group by. That's a really simple but useful transformation. I can say do the group by. And when I do the group by, I can say give me count of rows. That's a very simple option with that. That comes like this. Group by is a transformation that takes a little bit of time. So here you can see that I have one record per product and all the transactions for that product. In total, I have 158 rows. Before this was like 60,000 records. It's a good way of reducing the size of your table if you don't really need that much of details. Now, let's say in addition to this, I also want to have the sum of sales for each product, for each group. So what I'll do is I'll go to the setting of that grouping. I don't do another grouping. I just do go to the setting of that grouping. I go to advanced option. I add an aggregation. I say, give me sum of the sales amount, and I can call this one revenue, something like that.
Reza, sorry to interrupt. I think there is a like 5-second delay. Do you mind maybe stop sharing and sharing your screen again if it can settle the problem?
I can do that.
Thank
Stop share. Or I can turn off my camera as well. That might affect this. Okay, and then share again. This is screen. So is it better now if I click here, for example? Does it make any difference?
Well,
11.
okay.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, good. So so here you can see that I have like the revenue, the sum of sales for each product, for each group, right? So everything is quite simple. You can go and add another aggregation. Let's say you want to get the first the first transaction date, which would be like the minimum order date in this case, and that would be, I don't know, first transaction date, something like this, right? You can go and build your table the way that you want. So in each group, this will look at the first transaction date. But now imagine you are going to do some stuff which are a little bit advanced. They are not like this easy to do. For example, I want the sales amount of the first transaction in each group, right? Let me go back here so that I can explain it, or like one step before would be probably better. For example, here you can see that I have like 2 transactions for this product, 346. I have 2 transactions. I have actually more than 2, but let's say just these, for example. Now I want to get the sales amount of the first transaction. How can I do that in this grouping scenario? You might think we'll go to the setting here, we'll add an aggregation, and we say, give me the minimum sales amount. That won't be correct because minimum sales amount is not the sales amount of the first transaction. Maximum sales amount is not the sales amount of the first transaction, how can I say, give me the sales amount of that record that has the minimum order date? This is a little bit different from normal transformations, right? If you want to do something like that, you are limited to the number of operations you can do here. So here I can do max, min, sum, average, count, distinct count, things like that, right? However, when you think beyond the graphical interface, you can do many other things that you don't see here. Always when you work with Power Query, think of this graphical interface as a layer on top of what actually Power Query can do, right? If I come here and see only like this amount of functions available, operations available, that doesn't mean that Power Query is not capable of doing anything more. That means that Power Query team didn't have time to implement more in this graphical view, but in fact, there should be definitely much more than that. How can I know about that? There is a really useful way of knowing about functions in Power Query. You can actually create a blank query. And in the formula bar, you can type equal hashtag shared, lowercase, everything lowercase. Power Query is case sensitive. This will give me a list of all my queries, privacy level, all my queries in this file, plus all the functions, enumerators, everything like that in the Power Query library. This is the list returned. It's actually a record, by the way. This is returned all like that. You see everything, every single function in the Power Query library in my Power Query editor is now available here, right? So if ever you want to search for a function, this is the best place to go and search for it, right? That way I can go and find these functions, right? And this is really the way that I use myself every day when I'm looking for a function. Now I can convert this to a table. This is a record. I can convert it to a table. When this becomes table, I can filter on it easily. Those functions that you have seen in here, going back here, those functions that you have seen here, min, sum, max, these are list functions. Why list functions? Because every column in a table is a list. So those are list functions. Now I want to go and see what are other list functions. So what I can do here is in this one, which is the result of that hashtag shared converted to table, I can come here and say, show me everything starts with list dot, because list functions, they are all starting with list dot. I click on that and this gives me all list functions here, right? How many they are? 70. 70 list functions are here. You have seen only a few of those in that graphical interface. One of them was list.sum, probably like the other one was list.min, list.max. But you see how many other functions we have, which is not available there? That means that you can use any of these functions you like, right? Even in that context, you can use it. The only thing is that this function is not really implemented in the graphical interface. One of these functions is list.first. Let me sort this alphabetically, a little bit hard to find anything here. List.first, right? List.first is a function that I'm going to use. And whenever you click on actually a function description, this will give you an information. List.first, what it does when you have a list of items like this, it is going to pick the first item in that list, right? Quite useful. And if it is empty, it returns -1 and things like that. So if I want the sales amount of the first transaction, let's go back to the previous question. I want the first sales amount of the first transaction. How I'm going to do that? First, I need to get this data set sorted. So I go one step back. In this step, I do the sorting based on the order date. I say sort this ascending. When I sort it ascending, this means that the first transaction would be the earliest transactions, right? Usually after this step, you need to do a table.buffer as well. So what I'll do is I'll insert another step, because Power Query by default tries to do the query folding, reorder some of these steps. So I'll do table.buffer to make sure that this doesn't do that ordering and things like that. So this will keep that sorting before the next step applies. That is also another function, quite useful function to work with. Table.buffer has many useful scenarios. This is only one of those. Then I go to my grouped rows, right? So now the grouping happens after the data is sorted, right? So when this happens after the data is sorted, I need to add a column here using list.first, not list.sum, not list.minimum. How can I do that? I can go to the query editor, let's say the formula bar here. I can do that in the formula bar, or you can do that in the advanced editor itself here, right? Depends on which one you are more comfortable with. Any of these are fine to be used, right? So let's say I'm going to do that. Enable border wrap would be also helpful. Let's say I'm going to do that in the advanced editor. In the advanced editor, this is the last step, the step that table.grouping is happening, right? I'm going to just put some inters here just to show you how this data looks like so that you have a better understanding of this. Right, so I'm not really changing it. I'm just adding some inters here so that you can understand this part a little bit better. So what this part is saying that table.group is the function. It gets the table coming from the previous step. It groups it based on product key. It produced 3 columns, aggregated column as the output. Count is a row count of the table. Revenue is list.sum. First transaction date is list.minimum, right? What I need to do if I want to create the first transaction sales amount is copy this, paste it here. I can call this revenue of the first transaction. Instead of list.sum, I say list.first. And this IntelliSense is quite helpful because it shows you all other functions that you have as well. So you don't necessarily need to go to use #share to find the functions that you want. However, that can be helpful, right? Okay, so list.first, everything else is exactly the same, right? So I just copied that. I changed it to list.first. I renamed the column itself. When I click on done, this will do that operation. It will show me a column, which is the first transactions revenue, right? So here you can see that for this product, we have this many transactions. This is the total revenue, but the first transaction revenue is this, right? Quite simple, useful way of doing it if you know how to change your scripts, if you know about M, which is the Power Query scripting language. Just with a simple change, you don't need to go and write everything from scratch. Just with a simple change like this, you get what you want, right? Now, to know how to use these functions, of course, that method I explained to you, the #shared method, is quite useful. That is what I use myself every day to find the functions that I'm looking for, but Power Query docs is also quite helpful. It has a list of functions and some documentation of those functions. One of the things you have to notice here is that if you do something like this, then you will lose the setting icon here because you have used the functionality not supported with the graphical interface. If you want to get that back, you have to go and remove the part that you added. Okay, so just checking, is there any questions before moving to the last demo? Okay, nothing.
I have a question.
Yes.
You know, there are many websites where you can find more info about DAX functions and examples, yes, and so on. Do you know any for M functions?
Not a single website that has all the information. Mm-hmm. I'd say if you want the best documentation, it is actually this
That
itself.
one.
This
Yeah.
has a good documentation. Apart from that, I wrote about some of these functions, not all of those, of course, myself in my blogs. Chris Webb did some in his blogs, quite a lot of these functions in details. Imke did quite a lot of these functions as well, but there is no like one place that has all of these at one place.
Okay. Okay. Good to know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Welcome. So the next, the last example I'm going to talk about is error handling. Now, error handling, I'm going to do that in another demo because I want to load this into Power BI and show you what happens with that. So let me close this one, close this Power BI desktop too. Open a new Power BI desktop. And all of these examples, by the way, available in my blogs, videos. Go and check it out. Okay, so here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get data from Excel. I have an Excel file. Let me just show you that file first. I have an Excel file like this. It's a simple Excel file, one table only, customer information with their details, right? I'm going to get this information in Power BI. So what I'll do is I'll go to this folder, select the file, and then select the table as well. I go to transform data first, just to show you that there is nothing problematic in there. So here I come, I see the tables, I see everything is perfectly fine. You see like this green bar at the top showing that these are perfectly fine. For some of those that are gray, that means there is no value in there. Or there are some null values in there, but there is nothing red, right? There is no errors or anything like that. Even if you go to show like column profile, which shows you some information like this, or column quality, which shows you things such as this, there is no errors or anything like that, right? So what I'll do is I'll close and apply. This will load that data into Power BI. This might happen to you. You get data from a data source, you load it directly and you get an error, right? Even without really having an error, you get suddenly an error all of a sudden like this, right? You have seen that this didn't really had an error previously, but now it has an error, right? It gives me some information about like, there are like 7 error rows out of this. And you can click on view errors that will bring to Power Query Editor. But the thing is that this is all in Power BI desktop. If you build your solution, you publish it to the service, you want this to work without your interaction. You don't want to open the file and see where's the errors, view errors and things like that. This process should work without any interaction like this. How you can get it working? You can get it working actually by handling your errors in advance. So I'll go to view errors just to show you that what are those errors first. And then we'll talk about how to handle it. So when you click on view errors, this shows you that these are the records that has errors, right? And when I go further, I see that their error have been all in the birth date because there was a problem in the birth date. For example, here I click and this is the details. Because there is a little D in the birth date, that is why I get the error, right? But this is a developer job. I am a developer, I go and see the errors. I don't want this to happen. I don't want this solution to be dependent on me to go and fix it. I want everyone, even my users, to use the report. If there's any error, there's a message in the report saying that there is an error and they can see the error themselves inside the report, inside their troubleshooting reports and things like that. They can see those, they can go and fix it, right? For example, they have access to that data source, they go and clean it, next refresh will get it fixed, right? I want this all to be automatic. I don't want any interaction for myself. How can I do that? Let me explain that in this example. So I'll remove this automatic error rows created and the folder for that as well. I have my customer table. What I'm going to do is I'm going to disable the load of the customer table. Then I'm going to create a reference from this. I'm going to call this dim customer original. I'm creating a reference from this. I'm calling this dim customer, right? This would be the one that is loading into Power BI. And in this one, I want everything without any errors. So what I'll do, I know that the error comes in birth date column. I go here and say remove rows, remove errors, right? So in case there is any errors, this will not have any problem. Now, if I say close and apply, you'll see that this will load without any problems. Everything would work perfectly fine. I get no errors at all. However, this is not solving the problem because now I have some error rows that are not loaded and nobody actually noticed that there are error rows, right? How should I know that there are rows when I remove this? That is why actually I referenced it, because I can reference it again here. I reference this one and I call this one dim customer errors, right? And in this one, I do exactly the opposite. I say in the birth date column, keep rows, keep errors. You might have seen these keep errors, but you haven't used it. Now this is how you can use it, right? I can say keep errors. And this one actually shows me the errors, right? Which is quite good. So that one, no errors, this one, errors. That is the clean data. That is the one that I use for my analysis. This one is the one with errors. But then the problem is that if I say close and apply, I'm still going to get exactly the same problem because this column is still here, right? This column has errors. I don't want to remove this column because this is useful information for me. Based on this information, I can understand what is the error, right? So how can I get this information but still be able to load this data into Power BI? The trick is again using just a little bit of code experience of Power Query. So what I can do is I can do this. I can add a column, a custom column. In custom column, you can write whatever you want, any M code you want. So here I can say try. Try is a very useful keyword in Power Query. Just try, T-R-Y, lowercase. Try means that try this expression that is coming after that. If it is fine, returns the value. Otherwise, returns the result of that, which might be error, but as a detailed information, not as an error. So I can say try this column, try birth date. Just that. Try also comes with other variations as well, like try otherwise and things like that, but try itself is fine. Okay, so try this. And here it is. You see that this doesn't really return error. However, it returns a record. That record includes two columns, true for has error, which means that this record has an error, and the error details itself, right? All of these has an error, so I'm not really interested in has error part of it. I'm only interested in an error, right? So what I'll do is I'll expand it, but from the expanded part, I just select error, right? Now, error itself is another record inside the record. But this time the record has the details for me, the reason for the error, the message, the details, right? And for any of these, this might be totally different. So I'll expand it. I keep the original name, so it says error.reason, error.message, error.details, and here it is. After the expand, I have all the error details here. What is the reason? What is the message I got? And what is the error details, which is the exact value coming from that column. Right. With this information, even your users would be able to investigate what is the issue. Now, the last step for me is to get rid of this birth date column, because as long as this is here, I'm not going to be able to load it into Power BI because I'm going to get error, right? I have all the information for those in these 3 columns at the end. So I'll just remove this column and then close and apply. Right now I would have 2 tables in here, my dim customers and dim customers errors. They won't have any relationships because they are not supposed to filter each other anyway. I use my dim customer to do any normal reporting, any normal analysis. I use my dim customer errors for my troubleshooting report. So usually you have like an exception report page, something like this. This can be things such as like how many errors rows you have. This can be a card visual with, let's say, customer key. I just bring it here and change it to count. Yep, it is count. So this, in fact, is the count of errors, right? Not customer keys, right? So I can call it errors, right? So this many errors. You know the best how to do these formatting and things like that, so I'll skip that for now. I can bring also the details here. I can say for the errors, give me the error reason, message, and the detail. So my user can come here and see those information as well. You can do things such as this chart showing the error reason, and again, count of customer key. If I can make it a little bit bigger. Of course, these are all data format errors, so error reason probably not the best. Error message, for example, something like that, right? So you can actually build something like this. Users comes here to the report, everything refreshed perfectly fine. You haven't lost any data. They see that there is a problem in the report. They go and fix it. In the next refresh, this might be less than those number of rows. This whole solution works without you needing any specific things, right? Now, this was a very, let's say, what I call simple exception handling, because in this one, I assumed that you know which column caused the error, right? Birth date column caused the error. What if you don't know it? There is a way for that. There is a way to do like in your copies, instead of saying for one column to do like remove errors, you can do for the whole table and say remove errors if I can't find it, right? So if you click here, remove errors on the whole table, and then for this one, keep errors on the whole table. However, the process of getting the error details when you do it across multiple columns would be a little bit different. You need to work with a custom function and a loop structure, something like that, which I have a couple of blog articles about that as well. And we don't have so much time to talk about that. So in overall, just a wrap up before before any questions checking. Everything I mentioned to you, they are all available as blog articles and YouTube videos. You can go and watch it. Go to the Radacad website, you will find a Power BI book free as well for you. You can go and use it. I have a Power Query video course along with many other Power BI video courses in Radacad Academy. Unfortunately, they are all in English, but we are working on bringing some Spanish content in our academy as well. Some of them are developing as we speak. Nice. And here we have like a $30 discount for the first month of Academy membership as well. If you want to use it, go ahead and use it. So I'm available if there is any questions. Question from Dania, can you show again what you wrote when creating the custom column? Yep, of course I can do that. So what I've done was this. When I've created the custom column, it was just a very simple try statement like this. I just used try space and then the column that caused error. It means that try this column. If it returns error, this would give you that result as a record, right? Try with lowercase. All characters are lowercase. It's not a function, it's a keyword. Any other questions?
Yep, I think we have another one. What are the main M functions you would recommend? The ones that you use the most in Power BI.
Actually, all of them. Like when you work with a language, it's like you have a toolbox, right? When you work with a language, you can say like, I use these tools, I don't use other tools. Every tool has a scenario of using. Every function has a scenario of using. Some of them you use more, some of them you use less, like merge or append. Things such as these are used a lot more than some other functions, but it doesn't mean that those functions are not useful. There are many useful functions. I'd say like my best advice would be always using that hashtag shared to find type of functions you want. Usually they are like with a prefix like list dot. That means these are all list functions. Table dot, all table functions. Record dot, date, time dot, right? Based on those, you can find the function you are looking for. Sometimes the documentation is not great, but usually you can get something out of it with few times practice. Like one of the things I can mention to you, which Chris Webb actually wrote about this in his blog recently as well, is that if you use the normal merge operation comes in graphical interface, that gives you a little bit different performance compared to when you use the table.join function yourself, because then you can specify the algorithm for join, you can sort the data before you're joining, and this whole process might make your join process much faster, right? So there are many like details about all of these things. There is no like single or a specific set of functions. All of them are useful.
Okay, thanks. I think you have another question from Raquel.
Okay, why Power Query not evaluate regular expression? Good question. I always ask about that from Power Query team as well. And I'm always hoping that this would be available at some point. Unfortunately, not right now. Can you use R and Python instead? Yes, you can. Actually, we have one blog article in our website. It might be by Phil or Leila, I don't really remember it, which explained how you can do that. However, with that, there's also another problem that if you have like R functions used, they are not supported with the enterprise gateway at the moment. So when you publish it to the website in an organizational workspace, that might not be useful, but still can be a good option. I'd say it is definitely coming at some stage, the regular expression support, but I don't know when.
Okay, and Ignacio is also asking, can you save a value that is set by the user, like selecting language, to be active in the next session?
You can have parameters. You can define the parameters, and users can go and add and change parameters. But then they need to actually refresh the dataset after they change the parameter. They need to refresh the dataset. It's not a really great experience for users to do that. If you want anything that users go and edit and interact with it, then you have to create what if parameters. Those are like DAX parameters compared to Power Query parameters. Power Query parameters are useful for like creating custom functions, loop structure, and things in the ETL process. And shouldn't be really used for user interaction. Also, it can, but it shouldn't.
Yeah. Okay. No personal configuration. And I have another question coming. If there is any official documentation about Power Query in SAS,
Power Query in SAS.
Data.
Okay, I think there are some documentation coming about all connectors, like connecting to this, connecting to that, connecting to that. SAS should be probably one of those.
but I don't know like how much in detail that would be. Yeah, so don't really have any information about what type of documentation would come.
Okay. Dania, any other?
Yes, I have another question. I'm not. I don't use a lot M, and my problem is that I'm afraid that if I touch something in the code, and I'm afraid that I will break it. But when I use Power Query, I know that I can delete my last step, and I would like to know if in M there is a way to retrieve what I've done just before, or if I erase something, is it dead, or can I come back on where I was before?
Good question. Unfortunately, we don't have like something like undo or Control Z in Power Query, right? So if I go and remove this step, that step is gone. But you can always do this. You can go to Advanced Editor. So right now I'm returning this step's result. I can say, okay, I don't want this step result. I want the result of this step to be my output, right? So I haven't really removed that step. You see that the step is there, but I don't care about that step. I'm returning this step instead, right?
Okay.
When I click on done, it is a little bit slow, but it shows me, right? You will, of course, lose all the steps here, but it's a good way for you to still have them here and play with them. So like do anything you want, and then later on just bring that one back. That will bring all the steps back. It won't be like exactly like a Control Z, but it would be a way that you can go and play with it. I always recommend to go just do anything you want. Even if you break something, let's say you remove that and then it doesn't work, it gives you an error. It's just a simple change. You can go and put it back, or always good to have like a copy of your table. You can have a copy of this table, disable load, and duplicate it in your next copy. Do whatever you want as a sample transformation. When it all worked, go to Advanced Editor of that one, copy that into the first one, and that works, right? So it is going to break, definitely, but we all learn from these breakings of the codes. That is why we learn.
Yeah, right. Okay, thank you. That's great. Thanks for advice.
Welcome.
Are there other questions? I think people they will write to your site and use the coupon. They're not here.
Yeah, we will later ask you about all of the blog posts that we commented today, that you talked about, because we saw a lot of stuff right now, and we need to go back to it and take a closer look at everything. So we will ask you about the blog posts about Power Query and M. Okay?
Thank you. And if anyone has any questions about these, just feel free to send me an email.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just before closing the event, we just have a last part of announcements. So I will just share my screen again just to close the event. Okay?
Yep.
Thanks. So we are here. Yeah, so just before going to the...
Dania, there is another question to Reza.
Okay.
Okay, how we can improve performance when we have several merges. I recommend checking out Chris Webb's recent blog post. He had like, I think 4 different blog posts about how to improve the performance of merge. There are some steps such as like removing all unnecessary columns, using a specific merge algorithms and things like that that makes it performing better. But another option would be like if you are getting data from like SQL Server backend or anything like that, try to do your merging over there using SQL joiner statements and things like that and bringing the result here. Merge is a tricky operation in Power Query that you need to do some steps to make sure that you get the best performance out of it.
Yeah, it's a tricky one.
More questions? That's it. I don't see the chat anymore. Raquel?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So first of all, thank you very much, Reza, for sharing your skills and knowledge with us. It was very interesting, and we will surely have to see it again. And thank you very much for the discount. It was unexpected, and this is a very nice gesture. So thank you. And I will go now to thank you. I will go now to the last part, a few announcements about the community. We now have a new member in the organization team, which is Alejandro. Unfortunately, he cannot be here today, but he will present himself in the next event. Second news is that we now have a logo for our Power BI group of Barcelona. So this is the Sagrada Familia. And this idea comes from Ignacio Cabrero, who gave us the hint that we should maybe straighten our brand and identity. So we are now in the good direction. And we also created a hashtag of PUG Barcelona so that you can all follow our events, our activities, and you just have to write it, for example, in Twitter, and you will see what we are doing. And I will let Raquel finish with the next events.
Yeah, so if you're interested in more events in Spanish, these are in Spanish now, the Power Platform Marathon Virtual, a lot of people will be there. I know for sure some of them are here today. For example, Dania, who will be giving a talk about DAX and sports. So it will be very interesting. And also the next event will be the 25th of June by Antonio Ferra, who's from Palma de Mallorca. And it will be by Power Platform Spain. And we will send the link to the Meetup event to all of you. Okay, and now I'm sending also a questionnaire. If you can fill it out, it will help us for our next events. And yeah, so we will also send it with the video and with the Reza's materials, so you can go and check it out later. And thank you all for coming, and thank you, Reza, for being here with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for everyone joining.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Reza, and see you soon.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, bye. Bye.
Gracias, Ana.
Nada.